You're the highest level State Department official to quit over the Afghanistan war. How did you come to that point?
It is a long process, as you can imagine. Certainly wasn't one eureka moment. What I found, we were fighting people who were fighting us only because we're occupying them, or because we are supporting a central government that they view as occupying them. Adding more troops or keeping the same amount of troops we have in there right now will not end the civil war. It'll only prolong it because it doesn't provide any incentive to either side to settle.
You and other critics of the war have been right for nearly 2 decades, for the almost entire time it's been fought?
You know, I don't think any of us needed reassuring, particularly in light of the fact, not just in Afghanistan, but what we've seen happen in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Yemen, Somalia, all throughout, say, sub-Saharan Africa, that these wars are not just immoral and illegal, but they're counterproductive.
Yet on the ground in Afghanistan, you could see all this a decade ago. Did your bosses know what you knew? Because what we're learning in recent weeks is that a lot of this stuff was known and hidden from the American public.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we don't have time to go through the catalog of people who agreed with me but didn't say anything. And when my resignation came out, it was a big story in the Washington Post, front page above the fold, at 3,000-word, biopic. And I asked Karen DeYoung, the reporter, why she gave me such coverage, why she put so much capital into me. And she said, simply because when I asked everyone I knew at the State Department, the White House, the National Security Council, the Pentagon, the CIA, et cetera, whether or not they agreed with you and what you were saying about Afghanistan, they all did.
If this was the third or fourth or fifth year even of the war, then you could say, well, we need to continue being that optimistic and go. But when you see the same comments from 2004, especially about the Afghan National Security Forces, from 2004, these guys are increasingly taking the lead. They're, getting out there. They're gaining the support of their countrymen. Only in the 11th year, you still don't see physical evidence of that.
With 100,000 U.S. troops and about 50,000 NATO troops throughout the entire amount of time that we had the surge forces in there, if they were unable to materially degrade the Taliban, then what logic are you going to place that as we're taking 33,000 out, as we're drawing down significant amounts of financial inputs, that suddenly the Afghan security forces who have been unable to, with our help, to knock down the Taliban are now suddenly going to be able to do it on their own?
I wrote in 2010 that we would lose the war if we didn't make some changes. And that was nothing unique to me. There was many people who understood that, who had been on the ground there. And so to claim now, 10 years after that they didn't see this coming is just, I don't think, credible. The only reason that all of these things are falling apart right here at the last is because we've had 20 years of abject failure of American policy and unwillingness to be honest with the American people. And I've seen so many of the very architects of this destruction, this disaster, both presidents and other generals, who have been the loudest and complaining the most about getting out and making all kinds of dire predictions and warnings, not stopping for a minute to show that they're responsible for this, the lies that they told the American people, the plans that they put in place, which never worked, and now that they want us to go further and cause more casualties is just unconscionable.
By the time I get to Afghanistan in 2011, which is my second war, that was Obama's surge. It was a blue surge. It was a Democrat surge. It was a polite surge, right? But it was still a failure, and it was still built on lies.
I think your approach is very intellectual, and I respect that on you. You surprised me when I first met you. Here was a soldier who had been in Afghanistan who was able to write about it in a very clear-cut and strong protesting manner.
Afghanistan I would call the unwinnable war. And again, that's my opinion, but if you look at Soviet record in Afghanistan or the British record in Afghanistan, it has gone poorly for any occupier over the course of several hundreds of years of history.
In public, generals and politicians were underestimating what I've said is the skill, the will, and the popularity of the Taliban. But in private, we found out from the Washington Post Afghanistan papers, they knew that this thing was built like a castle of sand.
General Petraeus got like 4,000 words in the New Yorker the other day. General Petraeus, loser of 2 wars, convicted criminal, liar, right? Snake oil salesman extraordinaire. Max Boot still has a column at the Washington Post. So does David Ignatius. been wrong about everything ever since 9/11. And they're still telling us that the problem is not enough soldiers, not enough surging, more residual forces, and all these terms they come up with. And I think I have a real problem with that notion, because they get to decide where they start the clock. They are not able to describe what the meaningful long-term, positives that an American militarized response can provide. And yet the dissenting voices are still largely left out of the media.